I love this. This is in the United States. During cable television, they have these channels like the History Channel and the Comedy Channel and stuff like that. And the History Channel actually used to have history on it, and now it's got like reality TV. But they had this comedy. The Comedy Central used to do comedy shows. Can you believe it? And they used to have the brick walls behind them. And so I'm thinking up here. I'm like, whoa, comedy! Like, I should tell some jokes. I just flew in. Boy, are my arms tired. All right. So we're going to talk about the awful German language. Because I was just in Berlin, and apparently, according to Job, I sound like Lieutenant Aldo Raines when I speak German. So I won't speak German. I don't speak any Dutch. I only know one Dutch word, and I'm not going to say it because I said it last time. So I got invited to do a talk in Dusseldorf, and it was like a one-day thing, and I was like, yeah, totally, I will totally do this. This is great. And I thought, man, flying across the Atlantic Ocean just for one day is going to suck. Like that, what is the point of that? So I got in contact with Thomas, and he was like, yeah, totally, we'll do that. So I want to thank you and thank the organizers of Fronteers specifically for having me and for putting me on at the Improv, so where I can tell some jokes about accessibility. In the United States, we have a law called Section 508, which is still grossly out of date, and it's tied to WCAG 1.0. And it says that basically your interface must work with JavaScript turned off. Anybody here have a website that works with JavaScript turned off? Yeah. Holy shit! Never mind. Forget it. You guys have ruined the whole talk.
It was built in 2001. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. You look at the doc type, it's HTML2. But if you use React or Angular or any of that sort of stuff, you don't even get the content with JavaScript turned off, right? And so the way that people used to do that, is they would just like start, they'd say, oh, you got to have like your Noscript tag. And your Noscript has to have whatever the stuff was that was in JavaScript. Because obviously, you're going to just put all your interactive shit in a Noscript tag. And whatever that is, this was the practice that people used to use. Like if you had a flyout menu like one of these, you would be like, okay, now I'm going to put my regular menu in a Noscript tag and that's it. So I wanted to call this talk, Noscript is Dead. Enhancing accessibility with JavaScript. But before I want to do that, I actually want to talk about JavaScript itself and making JavaScript accessible. And the way I want to do that is by creating a dialogue. Anybody ever created a dialogue from scratch? Cool. Fun times, right? So, or if you have jQuery, you just run jQuery dialogue with jQuery UI and you're done. So let's make one of those things. I'm going to play TV chef along the way because I don't actually want to live code all that sort of stuff. But at high level, we have our awesome site. Do not steal my graphic designs. I am a skilled designer, as you can see. It's my trademark. So I want to click that sign in button. And when I click the sign in button, I want a login dialog to appear. Now there's a couple of core accessibility requirements that we want to pay attention to. At a high level, what I really want to say is that everything should, there's this principle of least astonishment, which is basically that the user should not feel surprised by the user interface when they actually interact with it. They should understand immediately what they're getting into. So I say the question that we need to answer is, what is this thing and what does it do? And so we should understand, for instance, when we tab around and we get to this sign in button, it should say something along the lines of sign in button, right? And if I get to the link for home, if it tabs to it, oh, nice. Okay, so if I get focus on that, it's going to say products link. You understand what I'm saying? The user needs to be able to immediately understand what's going on. So if we fire off a dialogue, they need to know that they fired off a dialogue and that they can now start logging in. So the mantra is, what is this thing and what does it do? Can you guys all say that? What is this thing and what does it do? Should I count it off? What is that in Dutch? What? Just 2 words? I said a whole sentence. What was it? Like, shut up, Karl? Is that Dutch for asshole? Okay. So we're going to click on this sign in button. We're going to go there. So how are we going to start this off? We're going to create an AXS dialog object with 2 methods, an open method and a close method, because that's what a dialog does, right? It opens and it closes. Yeah? Okay. So step 2, we're actually going to do the guts around making the dialog itself. So we create that overlay div. So what does that overlay div do? It creates that semi-transparent background. All right? And then the open method, all it's going to do is going to add the class AXS overlay. It's going to do some other stuff there to show the dialog and hide the dialog. So if I just go over here, all the way to the bottom, I'm going to go to step 2. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go to console. AXS dialog dot open. Bang, it's open. If I had AXS dialog dot close, it's closed. Which is great because we can expect our users to go into console to launch that, right? But let's look really closely at what's happening. So I'm going to hit open again. So what we've done, okay, is basically that's going to be an element in the bottom of the DOM, right? That's usually where we put our dialogues. So there's our overlay that got injected. Here's our section element with our dialogue. We put that overlay over there to create this sense of modalism. And then we show our new thing on top of that. And so we use z-index values on the CSS to sort of create that layering effect. We think, because of the z-index values, that this is actually modal, right? So you guys all know what a JavaScript alert is, or confirm, right? That opens up and you can't do anything else. And because we have the z-index value there, that's sort of layering these things on top of each other. If I try to click contact or home or any of that sort of stuff, it's not going to work. At least that's what we think. And we'll see a little bit later that that's not how that works. But obviously going into console and opening a dialog is no fun. So let's get into our third step here. Okay, so we're going to open the dialog from the sign in button. So we're just going to add an event listener, the click event listener to this thing. So that's it. Let's see here. All right, so let's listen to this with a screen reader. Let's listen to this with a screen reader.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Everything you need to know about JavaScript accessibility. Link, home, link. Super awesome company. Banner 2 items. You are currently on link. To click this link, link. Hiding word castle. Link. Leaking web content. Phone button.
Shit.
You are currently on button.
Why can't I get to that?
To click this button, VoiceOver off.
I can't get to that because it's a span. Oh, but I can click it. Yay, I clicked it and it worked. But we can't tab to it. Why can't we tab to it? Let's see. Span ID sign in. That is not a button. This is the easiest thing in the world. How do we fix that? Put tab index 0 on it? No! Make it a button. We see this all the time. For those who don't know me too well, I work for the Pos Yellow Group. We're an accessibility consulting firm. We do accessibility testing all the time, and I see this every day. It's like, come on, dude, really? Let's make it a button. So if I made it a button, button.
VoiceOver link, sign in button.
Magic.
VoiceOver off.
This is the kind of stuff that lets me go talking at events, is I know what a button is. Isn't it awesome? Okay, so the other thing that we have a problem with, though, is focus management.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Reload this page. Sign in button. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control Option.
I'm on a button. Okay, so I'm going to hit the tab key.
Link, product, link.
Shit.
Link, link, the link, hall link, product link, link, contact X button, email address.
Oh, now I'm there.
Inside of VoiceOver off.
I'm going to guess, and it's just my genius intellect that lets me guess this thing. Your interfaces are a little bit more complicated than that, aren't they? So imagine you're on a website like, I don't know, Travelocity. Oops. God, I can't spell. And you might have a few links and buttons and controls.
VoiceOver on close, link, visit, account, link, my link, link.
Imagine your dialogue was at the end of the page for this.
Search for city and click next 8-9 button.
Right.
VoiceOver off.
Woo! Yeah. All because I just want to log in. So we can, I don't know. I'm such a JavaScript genius. Element.focus. That's all we have to do. So, okay, that's not exactly true. I'm doing two things. Element.focus and also tab index equals -1. Let me show you how this works, and then I'll explain why some of that stuff is different than you may already know about. Woo.
VoiceOver on Chrome, link, sign in, login, X email address,
Bang!
password, login, region.
Shut up.
3 items. You are currently on a region.
Shut up.
Inside of
Oh, I tried to mute, and he's got the HDMI. Never mind. Don't worry about it. So this issue here with the element.focus is really important. Obviously, we need to shift focus to it. But there's another problem that you have if you don't use tab index equals -1. This is your super duper accessibility expertise coming at you right now. Can you stand it? Tab index equals -1 fixes a long-standing and often regressed bug in WebKit browsers. So when you load a page, everything in that page, everything that's interactable or everything that's normally in the tab index is given there's an internal reference pointer to the tab index itself. Anybody know what the highest tab index value possible is? 32,000 something. It's a 16-bit kind of thing. Anyway, so as you go through, as you're tabbing through, that internal pointer gets updated along the way. And so it says basically this is the thing that has focus. And as you tab again, the next thing, that pointer keeps going. Unfortunately, WebKit is stupid and doesn't keep that value on something that you shift focus to. So if you put tab index equals -1 on it, it doesn't make it tabbable, but it allows WebKit to understand that internal reference pointer. Because otherwise what will happen is you get hocus focus, which is where if focus doesn't go anywhere else after that. Like if we have this open, focus should then continue on from this, right? So if that dialogue is focused, then the next thing that gets focused should be the email address. Without that, actually, it does weird things. So tab index equals -1 is your friend on that one. What happens when we close it, though?
Oh no. Yes, hello?
Hello?
VoiceOver on Chrome. Everything you need to know about JavaScript accessibility in 4.0.
Have you guys ever used VoiceOver before? Any Mac users? Okay, good. Yes! You guys are awesome. You don't count. Shit, I can't close this. Okay. You could press to make him shut up? Yeah. the universal shut up, Alex. Okay. So we have this thing open. We have this dialog open. We need to shut it. Fortunately, the fine folks at the W3C came up with way ARIA design patterns. And in this document, the authoring practices document, they have defined for us all of the interaction patterns for common rich internet widgets like this. So according to them, a dialog, a modal dialog, there should be a method to close the dialog without taking any action. This could be implemented via a cancel button, which is keyboard accessible. It is recommended that a dialog also be canceled by pressing the escape key with focus on any item. So the escape key is like the universal get me the hell out of here key. So this is what we would do in step 5 is allow it to close with the escape key. All right. So I hit escape. So for those of us who can see the screen, the rectangle around the rectangle on the screen is still there in that general location where the dialog was. The reason why is because that was the last thing that had focus. And we haven't updated that internal reference pointer. In fact, what we've done is we've basically destroyed that object that had focus. So now where is focus going to go? It's going to start over from the top. So it just so happens that it's not such a bad deal on this case because of the design being so simple. But the reality is, once you've destroyed that thing, made it display none, which made it, so we couldn't reference it, the problem at that point is that the browser doesn't know where to go. And so it just starts over at the top of the page. And that's another really big problem for accessibility because, again, chances are we might have a little bit more complex user interface than this. So we need to shift focus back. So we'll do this. We'll skip 6 because that's too easy. We've already done that part. Step 7, add a close button, make the close button do the close button business, and also change the button in the dialog header. So we saw this before. It said X, but is it really a button? So let's make sure it actually is a button. It is a button. Good. All right. Add a close button, make the close button do the close business. Yay. Oh, I forgot to update it to 7.
Everything you need to know about JavaScript accessibility in 40 minutes. Link, sign in, log in, email X button. Everything you need to know about.
So now we have a different problem. We made the X button do the closing, and now that has focus or has the pointer. All right. Okay. Okay. So now we still haven't answered this whole idea of what is this thing and what does it do. We know we've hit sign in. Like the user's going to know we've hit sign in. They're going to know we've gotten to something, but they're not going to know it's actually a dialogue. Part of the important part about ARIA, for those who've never used it or who have used it very little, is ARIA is actually a stinking liar. And that's really important to note. But what's cool about ARIA is when you have ARIA enabled assistive technology turned on and you properly use the ARIA, what happens from there is that the assistive technology can tell the user what the hell is going on. So if you create, for instance, fake radio buttons with ARIA and you have all the proper ARIA roles and all that sort of stuff, that's fine and dandy. If you put a role of radio on that, then the user is going to be told it's a radio button. So if you know, if you know by looking at it that you're on radio buttons, what can you do? You can select all of them? No, you select one and only one. How does a keyboard behave? How does a keyboard access behave on radio buttons? Once you get focused to one of the radio buttons, if you up arrow and down arrow, you choose between them. So we know from our experience, we have a cognitive model of what's on the screen, and our previous experience with user interface controls of that type allows us to understand what we should do with that type of control. The same exact thing happens with a screen reader user. If we're told you're on a radio button, now you know, okay, I can arrow through these. I can choose one of these. I can, that sort of thing. Same thing goes with the dialogue. We have to tell them that there's a dialogue. We have to tell the user that that's a dialogue because they know a couple of things there. First off, that they shouldn't be able to get focus outside of the dialogue, that shifting or hitting the escape key allows them to go away from the dialogue. Cool? So this is why we're going to add a couple of things to this. We're going to apply a role of dialogue onto the dialogue itself. We're going to label it. So we use aria labeled by, and that's going to point to the H2 that's on the actual dialogue itself. Let's see. So that points to the H2 here in the dialogue. And then it's going to add an accessible name to the button itself.
Link, signed login dialog with 3 items. Close dialog button.
Exactly.
Inside the dialog. Click this button. Press Control Option Space.
So it says you're currently on a button inside of a dialogue. Why does it know that? Because I applied that role. So the assistive technology now has the information needed to tell the user what's going on. The ARIA design pattern does say that I should shift focus, when it opens, I should shift focus to the first actionable item, which is why it goes to the close button. It's also a good way to give the user the ability to stop this interaction if they want to. But at the very least, now we're telling them what is this thing and what does it do. So if I hit the enter key now, shit, I still haven't shifted focus anywhere, huh? All right, so step 9, we're going to explicitly set the next logical element to receive focus. So I've actually, this is a pattern that I recommend using a lot everywhere you go with something like this, which is, if I can find it. Okay. So the close method takes 2 selectors, right? The first selector is going to be the dialogue. That's what the D stands for. That's going to be what we're closing. We've already had that before. But the N is going to be a new selector, a new ID, basically, for the next location that should get focus. So in some cases, like if it's a dialogue and we're logging in, the next thing that gets focus is wherever we go when we've logged in. But in this case, if we escape, we need to send the user back somewhere. And the proper place for a dialogue is to send them back to where they came from. This one, I think I found out this step was broken, so if it is, I will... So now I'm just going to hit enter on that button. There we go. So it did work. Yay! Okay, so what I've done is when I close it, when I just say get me the hell out of here, I shift focus back to the sign-in button, and that's how that should work. But imagine, for instance, that we were in a multi-step form, and I hit close to that thing, or I hit the next button or something. I can now use that pattern of shifting focus to the next item in sort of an accordion fashion or something like that. I can show an example if anybody's really interested. But there's still a problem. Huh. So we talked about modalism. We talked about modalism before, and we talked about the fact that there's a z-index value on there, and that I can't click any of that stuff. So if I'm here and I start clicking this, I'm sitting here clicking the shit out of that support, and it's not working. We think that that's fine because of the z-index value. The reality is, though, as we just saw, I can still get keyboard focus to those things. The other thing that I can do is I can still pull up lists of links that are outside of the dialog. So in other words, it's not actually modal, is it? We can fix that too. So in this case, we have step 10, which I've added a hide 'em and unhide 'em method. At the top, we have this other selector here, which is focusable. Those are things that are natively focusable in HTML. Links, areas of image maps. God, I hope you're not doing that. Button elements, select elements, text areas, things with tab index equals 0, and non-hidden input types are all going to be things that were focusable. So basically what unhide 'em does is it says hide any of that focusable stuff that's not in the dialog itself. So we're just going to apply aria hidden to that stuff, and we're also going to add tab index equals -1. The problem is, of course, now we have to have a way to keep track of that, so we're also adding that class, which is AXS hidden by modal. And then with unhide 'em, we basically reverse that sort of stuff. So our open method has a new, just one new line, this.hide 'em. Our close method has this.unhide 'em. So finally take a look at step 10. Maybe this step is the one I saw was broken in the train.
Voiceover on Chrome, every bit link, sign and login.
Yeah, shoot.
3 items.
That's okay.
Voiceover off.
So in this case, at the bottom of the page, I actually have the final JavaScript, which is my dialog. This is all available on GitHub, by the way, but we will.
Voice link, sign and banner, 0 items. Login, dialog, email ID, password, login, leaving web content. Login, pass, close, leaving web, no copy.
So we can't get focus on any of that stuff. Now, the only thing that we can still see, because I haven't hidden it, is headings, but we can't see any form controls that are outside of that. We can't see any buttons that are outside of that. And we don't have any links that come up in the rotor either because I've hidden them. And now if I escape, so now we see the form controls are back. Anyway, boop. So now we see that that stuff has been put back in the order. Fun? Cool? All right. So that's kind of it for that part. I have a bunch of other cool stuff to show you guys though. How am I doing on time? Good? I have 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay, so that stuff is on GitHub, by the way. You have on here, if you follow me on GitHub, it's going to be under my name, AXS Dialog. And so all that code is there, including the final JavaScript file. I also have, if anyone's still using jQuery UI, I have a fixed version of the jQuery UI dialog that does all this same stuff for that, and it'll have the one thing it does is that stuff with the hide 'em and unhide 'em. That's the only extra thing that it does. Okay, so let's talk about increasing accessibility or making accessibility better. Some fun stuff here. You know, I always thought that maybe if alt attributes didn't suck so bad, if we showed alt attributes by default, then
Voiceover, quick.
huh? I just flew in. Boy, my arm's tired. Imagine if alt attributes were always shown. If alt attributes were always shown, then they wouldn't suck so bad, right? Wouldn't just be picture of a guy holding a dog. Maybe that one would be. Let's see. So we'll kill that one. By the way, if you guys don't want to use jQuery UI and you do want to home grow your own dialog, you can use this. Now, The actual numeronym for accessibility is A11Y, so keep careful about that, because Rodney Ream is ALLYJS.io, but he's got a whole bunch of awesome helper functions in this for doing all that sort of stuff. For instance, maintaining the disabled state of things and hiding some of that stuff, like I talked about for the dialogue. So just wanted to point that out. Okay. Now let's see. I came across this. This was actually from an article on CSS tricks. That's not it. On CSS tricks, there was a guy who was like, "Oh, check out this awesome password strength indicator that I have," and it was like a tutorial on how to use the Dropbox password strength indicator. So it's got this little thing here, and it's like you just type stuff in, and it tells you, whether your password is any good or not. One of the things to know about screen readers is that when you get into forms mode, the only thing that ever gets read out by the screen reader is whatever is associated with the form field you're in. So if my password happens to be Karl is really fucking awesome, then what's going to happen is that's all that's going to get read, because it has to give me that feedback that I've been typing. So it's not going to give me that strength indicator. So if I just type this in, so on screen it's telling me that the strength of this password is weak. Add another word or two, common words are better. I don't have any of that information. So I'm going to have to do something else to find that out. And from a screen reader perspective, what will end up happening is I'll fill in the rest of this form, I'll try to submit it, and it won't do anything. And then I got to go hunting around for what the hell the problem is. This is so easy to fix.
Enter password. VoiceOver off.
So in this case, I just fixed it by adding really ridiculously one thing to this. Let's see if I can zoom in. I made this a live region. So a live region is a perfect thing to add to anything where it's going to update content that you need to announce to the user that exists somewhere else other than what has focus. So I gave that a role of progress. That's one of the appropriate roles for ARIA live regions. I gave it an ARIA live of polite. We'll talk about that in a second. ARIA atomic equals false. And I added this tab index equals 0, which is going to be it's going to be something we'll talk about in a second anyway. ARIA live has two possible values, polite and assertive. And this has to do with whether it's going to interrupt what the user's doing or whether it's going to wait for the speech buffer to clear. So polite is going to wait for the speech buffer to clear. The next thing I'm doing, though, is the tab index equals 0. We'll see in a second. So let's look at this version.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Enter password. Back frowny face. Add another word or two. Uncommon words are better.
So with that ARIA live of polite, it's going to wait until I'm done typing, and so I get my feedback. Now I don't know what's up with that, because that's something that they do that's weird and stupid. But it should be reading star, which is also not terribly useful. But that's, at least in terms of what is this thing and what does it do, it's something we're used to. But the next part of that is, let's face it, it's not like blind people are just sitting around waiting for feedback. Like, okay. They're not waiting for that when they're typing in their password. So that's what the tab index is for. So the next thing that gets focused now is going to be that. So that's why I overload it with that tab index equals 0, because I force it to be the next thing that gets tabbed to. All right. Let's see what other goodies do I have? I'm saving the better stuff for last. So another one that's really fun is, anybody here use Windows? Yeah. Sorry. There you go. One of the problems with on Windows is they have this high contrast mode that essentially strips out anything CSS for the most part. And so if you have background images or sprites or anything like that, that stuff is gone. So if you have a sprite that has like icons and stuff like that in it, then your icons are gone under high contrast mode. So what we did, I did work on healthcare.gov. Don't mention that outside of here. I said that yesterday, and then the next thing you know, it's like someone on Beyond Tellerand's like, Karl Groves did stuff on healthcare.gov. Blame him. It's all his fault. So what this does is this detects whether the person is in high contrast mode or not, and it'll return just a Boolean value. And then what we did on healthcare.gov is we swapped out a style sheet. So what we did was for those places that had background images, we would have text in there that was hidden. And then with high contrast mode, we just basically position that stuff where it needed to be with the style sheet. So that's on JS Fiddle if you guys want to see that. But that's another way we can use JavaScript to improve accessibility because, yeah, maybe we do want to use our sprites. There are better options now, but back in the day, there was, sprites were like the big deal. Let's see. JavaScript tooltips. So the jQuery UI tooltips are not all that bad. The problem with jQuery UI tooltips, though, is it uses a data attribute for the tooltip content. And so that's pretty much like saying don't use any content for this. If you have information, for instance, on this image, if you have information on the image, you're going to have a problem because that stuff is not actually in there. It's going to use, it says, see this, it uses this title. Now, it does create the ARIA describe by, which is cool, but that doesn't help people who are not on screen readers. So another option for that would be to, where did I put it? Okay. Put it in a tooltip that's in the title attribute, but not keep the title attribute. Title attributes are bad, and you should feel bad if you use title attributes. The only people who get a title attribute is somebody with a mouse who can hover on it. So people who are blind don't hover, and people who are on voice control don't hover either, right? And there's no,
They do show up after a bit on VoiceOver. If you wait a bit, it will be read out.
because it's read as descriptive text from the accessibility API. But in this case, what I've done is I've just added that into a span that's on there as well. I had a funnier version of this, but I didn't want to get offensive with something else. Okay, so got two more I want to show. How much time do I have?
10 more?
Okay, cool. So I happened to be at this crappy conference called Fronteers in the spring, and I did this talk where it was all about performance, and I had this dream that what I really wanted to do, because I like being contrary. That's why my talk was called "To Hell with Performance" at a performance talk. This guy really made a bad decision having me twice, basically, after I did that offensive. But I wanted to make like self-voicing slides, so I could just be like, just walk up and like walk away, because that's the punk rock way to do that stuff. So there is a text-to-speech API called Responsive Voice, and what they have is it's like I said, it just sort of kind of polyfills what we're already coming up with text-to-speech API. And another thing that I did, I use a thing called Shower.js for all of my presentations, and Shower is an HTML presentation template. So all of my slides are made in that, and so I had to hack it a little bit to make it accessible, because this is actually a common issue with anything that's like a single-page application. So let me load this up. CD. All right, so I'll just load up the thing, localhost. So here's my slides, and so this is what this is what shower looks like. You can do, I've hacked a bunch of stuff, like I put this backstretch plugin in there, but I also, one of the problems is, as I change this view, I'm actually not changing the page itself. It's like just like a single page app, it's all loaded into the DOM and I'm just showing different parts of the page. So from an accessibility perspective, as the user goes through that, they don't hear any changes to the page. So what I did was, just like that password strength indicator, I added a live region to it, so that a screen reader user, it's going to take a copy of the new slide that's appearing, and it's going to read it out. So what I want to do now is I'm going to hack this real quick. I'll put the responsive voice stuff up here pretty high, just to make sure it's definitely in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind to this event where it says DOM subtree modified. Whenever the live region text updates, it's going to read it out. Or I'm going to be really embarrassed. So we'll see. So I'll just put this up here. Hit save. Oops. I know what I need to do. All right, so yes, this is awesome. This is very good. Okay. Anyway, that was awesome. So this is what it's supposed to do. Oh my God, I bombed. Totally bombed. Okay, we're going to recover from this one. Okay, live region chat. So if you had your computer with you, you could do this live region chat with me. Let's see. So this is also on GitHub. It's under Ajax Chat. Let's see here. And in Ajax Chat, it's literally a chat page. Nice. That's perfect. Let's do some live coding, Carl. That'll be awesome. Let's see. Okay. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm using Firebase, and Firebase is like a WebSocket type thing. And if I turn on Command F5, anybody else on a computer now? No? What we could do is we could talk to each other, and live regions would read out to us. So. Yes, that's good. That worked great too. All right, fuck my life. I screwed it all. Not what I wanted. All right. So this is one that I know for a fact is going to work because I showed Yob yesterday. So in HTML5, we have HTML5 video and HTML5 audio, and all of the browsers now have closed caption support with WebVTT. Anybody here know what audio description is? Not him, you don't count, man. Sorry, dude. So audio description is really great. For people who don't know what audio description is, it's a narrated version of the visual information on the movie. So we know what closed captioning is. It's basically a real-time transcript of what's being spoken. But if you can't see the screen, especially let's imagine it's like Iron Man or something like that, like a really highly visual something on the screen. Audio description helps supplement that sort of thing. They don't exist on video players on the web, which is really stupid because it's just as important. Audio description is just as important to blind people as captioning is to deaf people. So what was cool and is unfortunately no longer the case is there used to be a thing called the Media Controller API. So I'll try to zoom in real fast here. The Media Controller API had the ability to allow one piece of media to control another piece of media. They got rid of it. It was basically obsoleted in HTML5 because it was actually sort of useless because you can still detect the play and pause events anyway. So even though this has media controller code in it, some of the fallback code is the really important stuff. So here's us doing video.addEventListener. When it's playing, we pass an anonymous function and we say play an audio file too. So we have a reference to an audio file here, and so when that plays, the audio plays. When that pauses, the audio pauses. When we fast forward it, the audio fast forwards. So this audio file the video file controls the audio file, which is really neat.
London, 1852.
So that was audio description.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, gentlemen certainly, this is no place for a lady. It gives me great pleasure, and no small amount of relief, to declare this the first ever Flushing Public Lavatory open.
He cuts a red ribbon.
Again, more audio description.
A man comes out of the lavatory whistling. He looks around.
Leave it 5 minutes.
The men look confused. Then they react, waving their hands onto their noses.
So just because the native HTML5 video player does not have audio description in it doesn't mean that we can't actually do that ourselves. And I tried turning this into a web component, and then I found ugly things with the fact that shadow DOMs can't talk to shadow DOMs, so I'm still sort of playing around with that. But that's my last example, and I hope that throughout this hour of me babbling about stuff like this, you've gotten some ideas on your own about things that you could do to actually improve accessibility, possibly using JavaScript. There's so many opportunities for this. For instance, the captions here are going to be run from a WebVTT file. So WebVTT file can be parsed. There's a repo on GitHub for that. So Anna Venkestran created the WebVTT parser. Actually, I think it's on Mozilla now. Yeah, Mozilla. But what you could do instead of having the captions display under the video, put them next to the video, okay? Because there's more people that use captions than just deaf people. Anybody know anybody with dyslexia? My daughter has dyslexia, and she uses captions. As a matter of fact, I forced her TV in her room to have captions turned on at all times. So what you could do instead of having the captions on underneath there is you could actually, make something where the captions are on all the time, like a transcript that gets highlighted as they go or something like that. There's plenty of opportunities to enhance accessibility with that. And so my final message is going to be that I challenge all of you to figure something out like that and do it and push it on GitHub, and I will share it voraciously. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
Sorry. I liked your dialogue example, and I noticed you were at some point hiding focusable elements. Would it have been an option to have all the page content in a container, have the dialogue be a sibling of that container, then area hide the container as you go into modal mode? Is that something that would also work?
That's the ideal. The ideal would be to do exactly that. So make you have a main element or something, and then your dialogue is outside of the main, and then you just hide everything in the main. The reason why I did it with like this in the example is because there's lots of times when people don't have that option because they're doing old work and they're doing work with old code and not new code. But yeah, that's a perfect idea. Someone else over there? Yeah, go ahead.
You showed some examples of like focus moving to an element that doesn't exist anymore, or being able to focus elements that are obscured by a set index. Why should millions of websites fix this problem instead of a handful of screen readers?
So if I understand the question right, your real question is why shouldn't the browser vendors do it?
Yeah, for example, why isn't there like a visual accessibility tree? If you are not able to click on something, why should it show up in focus for a screen reader?
That's
Screen readers that focus for everybody. I don't need a screen reader to focus on the rest of the page. So it needs to fix it for me too, and I don't have a screen reader.
Yeah, I agree, of course. But like the outline for an element that was removed, that's just plain silly. Why doesn't the browser keep track of the history of focused elements and just move focus back to the last or the element that is closest in the history that still exists?
I think that the problem there is that it would be the browser sort of making an assumption about.
It's the same thing as scrolling something in focus automatically, right? It's exactly the same thing, and they do that for visual.
That's not a bad point. So the comment really is, so if you scroll, if you're tabbing and then the next focusable item is below the fold, so to speak, you tab to that. That's going to bring that up into view.
Yeah, why is focus management only intelligent for visual users?
For who users?
Visual users.
That's a good question. I think that's a browser discussion.
Yeah, not only a browser discussion, right? Because why don't like screen readers have paying customers? Why don't?
Because for a screen reader, they don't care what has visual focus. They don't care what's in the viewport, unless it's a low vision user or something like that. But I don't think that they view that as their constituents. I don't know. I don't have a silver bullet answer for that. Anybody else? Yeah.
The JavaScript slides you showed, I forgot what those were called.
Shower? Actually, I think they call it shower. I've been calling it shower, but it's shower.
So the way you made that accessible, that seemed like a pretty clever and easy win, All the other ways I was thinking of that were like way more complex. But my question is, like, what do you say to people that think that making something accessible is like twice as much work or this huge thing when there's really these really interesting hacks available,
I say thank you, because I'm only a B- developer myself, and they keep me employed.
Right?
But yeah, it's not that hard, and I think that any Monty Python fans here, like the episode in The Meaning of Life where Mr. Creosote goes in and he just goes up to the menu and he goes, "I'll have the whole thing." That's how people view accessibility. Like, oh, I got to do everything. You don't have to do everything. I mean, yeah, eventually it'd be great if it was like the shiny unicorn of accessibility, but you don't really have to do all that sort of stuff. By volume, the issues that Tenon finds automatically are all related to, the bulk of them, probably 80% of them, are related to form fields and alt attributes and color contrast. That's it. So, I mean, you can get a long way towards getting your system much more accessible just by paying attention to that stuff. Then throw in keyboard accessibility. Then throw in, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to do it all at once. Do whatever you can. The idea of just get started. Just get started. That's the first part. Yeah.
But I also think that the world is changing because Chrome and all other vendors are creating accessibility tools inside the browser and ways to test it with CLI or something. So more getting better and better.
Yeah, exactly. If we give people better tools to work with, to test, and to know what accessibility is, I think that's important too. That's a good segue into Jobs talk. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, is there any way to track what screen reader you're using?
So the question is there any way to track what screen reader users are using? The very short, dirty answer is no. You can't, because it's not passed through as part of the user agent string, and also the way an assistive technology works is it basically interacts with the accessibility API that comes from the browser. So in other words, there's no kind of lying. An academic standpoint, we could detect certain screen readers, but we can't detect VoiceOver at all. We can't detect anything that's using, say, the iAccessible2 API or any of that sort of stuff. So it's like chasing your tail. There's plenty of stuff you can do. Like I've done stuff where I can detect whether somebody has zoomed in the page, you know what I mean? But you're still chasing your tail. Like the answer is just use responsive design, you know, if somebody zoomed in their stuff. So it's not a worthwhile pursuit for sure. Yeah.
I've heard this a lot of times, but something that is preventing this from going on, I mean, like technically VoiceOver could provide that information, hey, I'm on, but like there was a really big lawsuit for blind people saying, hey, I don't want the website to know I'm blind. I have no idea why that is, like the fear of discrimination. It comes from the US, by the way.
I think it was
Filthy Americans.
There was insurances that wanted to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can up their insurance to use their website.
Yeah.
So it's like the problem is you don't know what that site is going to do with that information. So everyone's just afraid. So they just shut down the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, what I'm trying to say is don't wait for it.
Yeah. That's a good point. Any other questions? Yeah.
You were talking about the healthcare.gov
Mm-hmm.
website. Could you show us that?
Sure. This is our pathetic attempt at socialized medicine, which is actually just a marketplace for you to buy insurance. So healthcare.gov is a website that if you don't already have insurance, you can actually go there and log in, or you can sign up to get insurance. So for instance, if you go in here and do this, take the first step to apply, you are taken into this workflow where you have to select your state, and then so this is exactly what I was talking about that next focus thing. Is I worked with them to institute this next focus thing, because otherwise, if you just showed this, it would have, you know, where would you shift focus to? And then you go back through here, and you get into this workflow where you're adding and removing people on your insurance and showing and hiding divs, and that's when it became a real nightmare. Yeah.
High contrast thing?
Oh, I don't know if I can demo it. High contrast mode stuff is only on Windows. The high contrast mode on Mac works great, and you're not going to have any problems, so there's no reason to detect it, but it's only beneficial on Windows. So, but yeah, if you want to, if you have a Windows device or a VM or something like that, fire it up and turn on high contrast mode and see where some of the stuff gets changed. You could actually watch in the DOM this style sheet get swapped out. Anybody? Yeah.
Are there any good tools or plugins for me to know if my page is, how accessible my page is? Kind of like page speed insights regarding performance of the website?
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, accessibility is not as cut and dry as like page speed stuff. So you could do web page test or something like that to detect it, or why slow, or those sorts of things, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, you made too many requests and all that sort of stuff. There are lots of tools out there. Yob's going to talk about that. The one thing to always keep in mind with the accessibility tools is they can't tell you if you're good. They can't tell you if a website has good accessibility. They can tell you what the problems are that you have that could create accessibility barriers. So they're not judges, they're diagnostic tools. And there's plenty of really good ones, and Yob's going to show that in his session. Anybody else? Well, I'm here all night, so you can ask me questions later. Not while Yob is talking, that's not nice to him. But yeah, so thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Job is up next, but that's going to be in 20 minutes time, because we're pausing for a break. We're breaking for a break, breaking for a pause. Let's get some drinks over there, and we'll be back here at 8:30. Hopefully, anyway. Yeah.